Hi everyone, welcome to today's webinar. I am Mike Samadine. I am a regional instructor for the National Wood Flooring Association. I am joined today by Doug Lindeman, Senior Tech Manager for Bostik, and the theme of today's webinar is going to be installation of engineered or solid hardwood flooring. Whether it's going to be on concrete or plywood subfloor, we're going to run you through all the steps necessary to ensure a proper installation. Doug?
Thank you, Mike. Like Mike said, today we're going to look at gluing down wood floor and all the steps needed to go through and get the process done correctly. You can see we've brought a few different products in today, some moisture mitigation products, and Mike will tell us all about that, and then a couple different hardwood adhesives. As we go through today's webinar, if you have any questions about what the products are, the installation applications that Mike is talking about, or just general hardwood glue down application, type them into the chat on your screen, and we have people here that will answer your chats.
Right. So in order for us to ensure a proper, long-lasting, and aesthetically pleasing application, there are certain steps that we need to follow. We need to consider, obviously, the job site and product that we're working with. You cannot just go out on a limb and suppose that it's going to work out if the house kind of looks good or if the product kind of looks good. We always have to make sure that we marry the product to the house. That's a process that first we call acclimation, meaning we have to get the house ready to receive the wood and then get the wood in once those conditions are met so that the wood can acclimate to the relative humidity and temperature of that space. In order for us to assess the actual job site, we can go through a pretty comprehensive checklist, and that's something that you guys can find on the NWFA website, nwfa.org. Mainly, our first and biggest enemy for wood floors is going to be moisture. So that's the one thing that we have to check for, and that does not just include the interior of the space. You will need to be very mindful of the exterior, how the grade slopes towards or away from the structure. If you have any downspouts, are they routed away? Are there any sprinkler heads that might be pointing in the wrong direction? So any source of intrusion for the water will need to be addressed before we actually use these products. I love to think of moisture barriers and whatever product you use that provides you with that moisture protection as extra insurance. So they are never okay to be used as hiding a potential moisture problem. So that is one of the steps we're going to be looking at today. Then we have to actually measure the moisture that we are dealing with, because every single space is going to have a certain degree of moisture transmission. It's going to be a vapor. There are certain devices, electronic devices, that you can measure them with, moisture meters. That is going to be a starting point for your measuring. You always have to keep records throughout your installation, and the only accepted ways of reading it are the calcium chloride test or the probes that you actually insert. There are several brands that produce those kits, but you want to make sure that they are industry recognized and accepted. Once we get into finding those issues, we have to address those, then we can move into actually mitigating our moisture in the slab, and that's where we go into moisture barriers. Now, roll-on moisture barriers, you have to look at them as a barrier or a retarder. Every system is going to have its own way of being applied. And Doug, if you want to talk a little bit about your particular product.
I will. So Roll Coat is the product that we're going to talk about today for our moisture mitigation or working as a vapor retarder on a plywood subfloor. Again, like Mike said, if we have major moisture issues as far as slopes coming into the house, drainage, coming off the roof, and that we have liquid water getting into our slab, that's not what we're trying to cure in this case. This is residual moisture that's in the slab from when the slab was poured, that's coming up out of that slab to try and equalize the environment that we're in. So It's typically not liquid water. It's a moisture vapor, like you see your breath when you breathe in the winter. That's what we're looking at. Again, concrete slabs are typically where we're going to see that moisture coming up. Our roll coat product, it's an acrylic-based product, so low VOC, easy to apply. It's going to be an air dry application. We will be installing it. That's just a regular 3A snap paint roller is all that we need. No special tools or anything for that. So pretty simple, pretty easy application. Again, always want to make sure we've got our proper protective equipment on when we work with products. So you see, like I said, low VOC. You didn't see me put a respirator or anything on. It's a safe product to work with. We're going to take it out of our bucket. Again, before we start applying this, one other thing to think about. What is the condition of your slab? We have to have our slab clean, open and porous, so it's absorbing water into it. No oils, greases, no old adhesives, anything like that. If you're doing a remodel, make sure everything's good and clean on the surface before we start applying. Products don't like to stick to an existing adhesive or something else on the floor. So get it clean first, and that's a mechanical cleaning. Don't take a solvent or a cleaner and clean it. Get with a grinder and grind all the old residual whatever's on it off the surface. So again, there's no mixing, there's anything. Open the lid of the bucket for the roll coat, and it's ready to come out.
There's one easy way to actually test the porosity of the slab, because like Doug said, all of these products will need a clean and porous substrate to go on. So if you just take a couple of drips of water and put them on that slab or whatever substrate you're working with, you need to see that they actually develop little leggings, so they are absorbed. If it just beads up after like 45 seconds to a minute, you're probably going to be dealing with having to scarify that slab, whether it's a PCD segment on a grinder or something similar.
Right, yeah, that would be an indication there might be some kind of a clear sealer or something.
Yes.
An old adhesive we can see, but if there's a clear sealer or a curing compound or something on the slab, we might not be able to see that. That water drop test that Mike mentioned is a good indicator of something like that being on the slab. So again, the roll coat, 3A snap roller, simply roll the coat down. When you're rolling it out, we're looking for an 8 mil thickness. An 8 mil wet film thickness is what you want to have when you do it. So if you don't have a gauge, look into getting a gauge before you start this. The film thickness for the roll coat or any moisture mitigation product that you are working with is very important. You have to follow the manufacturer's specifications.
Correct.
Read the technical data sheets from the manufacturer to make sure that your installation is going proper.
Most of these products, they do come with a lot of peace of mind, warranty, or standing by certain claims or failures if they do occur. In order for them to honor that warranty or stand by those claims, you will need to follow those manufacturers' recommendations. You want to record your readings. You want to record your application method, your dry times, because dry time is another very important thing. This is not a process you want to rush. So you want to snap a picture of the type of application you do or the reading on the moisture device that you have. It's as easy as taking a picture. You can email it to yourself and your client so they have it on record, and then you can just delete that picture from your phone. It's still in the cloud. But like I said, it's very important to keep those records, and I would encourage everyone to just make a habit of having that for every single project that they do.
Yes, document as much as you can. So as I said, on a concrete subfloor, we're going to do 2 coats at that 8 wet mil thickness to get the proper coverage. Those 2 coats in a glue down hardwood application will give us unlimited moisture vapor protection. You can see we have plywood here, and we kind of mentioned earlier glue down over plywood. We still need a vapor retarder between the plywood and what our finished wood flooring is going to be. That's basically blocking the moisture that's in the plywood from getting into our finished wood flooring and causing some warping or cupping potential issues. On plywood, we're only going to apply 1 coat of the roll coat at that 8 mil wet thickness over our plywood subfloor. And you can see one of the nice things about roll coat is the black color. So at Bostik, we actually specifically picked the black color, knowing that pretty much all subfloors are light in color. Concrete's light gray. Wood subfloors are going to be, a light tan color. So having a black color allows us to see where exactly we have been and where we haven't been yet. And you can see when we get full coverage that we have that subfloor is completely covered, completely blacked out to where we can't see the lighter colored subfloor through. So, if we do it really light, like I just rolled here, you can see in these spots where we can see the light subfloor coming through. If we're seeing that light subfloor coming through, obviously we don't have moisture mitigation product there. Obviously we're not blocking any moisture. The moisture is going to come right through and it's going to affect our flooring. So the black color is to help you installers out there make sure that you're getting that complete coverage.
To backtrack a little bit, what Doug said about one coat on a plywood or wood subfloor versus a concrete. Usually a plywood subfloor is going to be on top of either a climate controlled space or a climate uncontrolled, right? When you have a crawl space that's not encapsulated. So there will still be a certain amount of moisture vapor transmission. What we don't want to do on a plywood subfloor, we do not want to completely block. So in two coats, these products are a barrier. In one coat, they are a retarder, so they dramatically slow down that vapor transmission. Now what happens in a plywood subfloor, if you do completely block, over time that plywood or substrate will develop some dry rot because you are literally trapping all that moisture in it.
Correct. Yeah, so the one coat is what we want on plywood. Again, two coats, and like we said, the first coat will let cure for a full half an hour. And then after that half an hour, we can apply our second coat over the top of our concrete. And that will give us, with a glue down hardwood, the unlimited moisture vapor control. We've kind of fast-tracked a little bit, pulled a little
Yes.
Martha Stewart on you, where we actually, yesterday, we put two coats on this cement board right here in front of me so that we have our full two-coat system in place. And then we're gonna start to look at the next steps after we've got our moisture vapor control product in place. Then we're gonna have, Mike's gonna talk to us a little bit about flattening the subfloors. Again, if you have any questions on moisture mitigation, don't understand moisture, aren't familiar with it, any questions about the product itself, type into your chat, send the questions to us. Like I said, we've got people on standby that are there to answer questions during the webinar. Mike,
Right.
can you tell us a little bit
Yes.
about flattening a floor?
So every single manufacturer, reputable manufacturer like the one we have over here of wood flooring is going to have certain requirements. They're going to come with a pamphlet or brochure in each box, and they will have certain requirements as far as the condition of the substrate that we're going over. Moisture is a general issue. Like I said, moisture barrier, we showed that first because that's an insurance for you. I would honestly put it under carpet just to avoid the potential risk of having that mold, mildew type of smell. One of the very important requirements for a proper, sturdy, and long-lasting installation is going to be subfloor flatness. Now, like I said, every single manufacturer has them, but the National Flooring Association, being a nonprofit, universally accepted association or organization, they develop and put forth the guidelines for installation, sanding and finishing as well. But most manufacturers will either have their own, but they sort of retort and fall back on the NWFA guidelines. So we have certain restrictions, both for concrete substrates and for plywood subfloors. In concrete, we are obviously looking at more stringent, since the only fastening system that we would have is the adhesive itself. So you want to analyze, you want to gauge your subfloor, you want to measure any kind of deviation, and if you are not within the requirements, which are 1/8 of an inch deviation accepted within 6 feet, or 3/16 of an inch over 10 feet. So I would definitely recommend having some sort of straight edge or level, whether it's a 6 feet, 8 feet. I doubt many people are going to have a 10-foot on their truck, but you need to make sure that you are within those guidelines. Otherwise, your installation has a very high risk of either failing or being not satisfactory to your client, whether you're dealing with a rolling subfloor or hollow spots, anything of the sort, and any issue like that is going to lead either to a callback or a failed floor. On a wood subfloor, we are a little more lenient as far as the tolerance. We are looking at 3/16 over 6 feet, and we are looking at a 1/4 of an inch deviation over a 10-foot span. Your slab, if you're dealing with concrete, will also need to be structurally sound. You need to know, preferably, you need to know that it's at least 3,000 PSI total strength, so you don't want to install on something that's sandy or chalky, breaks down. It has cracks. For cracks as well, those actually have to be addressed. You cannot just put your moisture barrier over it. There are certain products that will help you deal with those issues. So you want to fill the cracks, make sure they are out of the way as a problem. Then you need to roll your moisture barrier, and then we can move into addressing those low spots that you would find. Generally, most slabs will need some sort of attention. They are, as the structure is built, they are never really meant to be within those specs because it's not something that's in the building code. They don't really know the purpose of the space when they build it. So you will need to address any kind of low spot. Before we look at the mixed product that we're going to pour, I also want to mention that this is a system. So each product is one step within a system. It's very important to stay within the same system, the same brand, right? You don't want to mix that company's moisture barrier with that company's self-leveling with that third company's adhesive. There's a tremendous amount of research and development, a lot of money spent by Bostik and other brands to actually ensure that these products work together for long term. You do not want to be in the situation where you follow all the steps, but now you have product A reacting with product B, you don't have sufficient adhesion and your floor is going to fail. Along the same lines, you need to follow the manufacturer's recommendations. There are some that like to put the moisture barrier first, and then they pour the self-leveling on top because they want to protect their self-leveling with that moisture barrier. Now, there might also be another step where after the moisture barrier, you need to apply a primer to ensure adhesion for the self-leveling. In this case, roll coat actually serves as a primer as well.
Correct.
So that's one step that you can, you're not skipping, but you're actually 2-in-1 with this.
Yeah, correct. So
right.
We're able to eliminate the need for a primer on top of the roll coat moisture mitigation barrier process.
Correct.
All right, so self-leveling, typically self-leveling is if we're looking at a bigger area. If you just have some small areas that you need to work with, we can look at doing a patching product. Patching, you're actually going to be, flat trowel, down on your hands and knees, spreading the product yourself. More labor intensive, more difficult to actually get a very flat floor. So self-leveling products are highly fluid, designed to be poured out in a big area. We do all the work standing up when we do them. This is the best system to get the flattest floor on the market. So as you can see, when we're talking self-leveling, how fluid the product actually is. And again, the product is called self-leveling, but we're really trying to basically get the floor flat, not necessarily level in all requirements, but flat is required in all installations. So we're basically pouring the product on the floor. You can see how it spreads and flows and moves on its own so that there isn't a lot of labor for us, to be down on our hands and knees manipulating the product to get it to the flat surface that we need.
Yes.
3/16 and 10 foot per NWFA spec.
Correct.
For flatness for hardwood flooring applications.
I'd like to mention a couple of things. When I did talk about actually checking the state of the slab, I did mention having a level. Now, as Doug said, we need a flat surface, not bubble level. You might be dealing with a 70-year-old structure that, because of settling, front side of the building is 50, 60 foot away, and it's probably 2 inches lower.
Right.
So there's no expectations, again, within the guidelines to level a slab to the bubble of the level, right? We're talking about flatness.
Yeah,
Two different things.
I like to bring up, flatness. Think of a versus level. Think of an ADA, a wheelchair ramp in a retirement home.
Yes.
Or a public building, an airport or something like that. If we're putting flooring on that, obviously no way we're leveling that out, but we have to have it flat. So even though we may be on a 25-degree angle, we still have to have flat.
Correct. With a self-leveling product, whatever manufacturer you use, you need to, again, we cannot stress that enough, follow the manufacturer's instructions. If the manufacturer requires 5 quarts of water per bag of self-leveling, don't do 5, just because it's going to pour easier. What the end result is going to be, the product itself, you just change the chemical composition of it, and the strength is not going to be the same. It might crack, it might flake, and that in turn is going to jeopardize and probably fail your installation. The adhesion is going to be of the self-leveling to the moisture barrier, or the adhesion of the adhesive to the self-leveling, that's going to be compromised.
Right.
Want to tell us a little bit about pouring?
So as you can see in the pour that we've done, you can see the foam that I put down. And obviously here in studio, we don't want the self-leveler to go and get out of the area that we're working today and get all over the floor that we're working on top of. But when you're doing it on your job site, you're going to want to seal up all of the possible. You saw how fluid the product was. It flows very strong, very well on its own. It can flow under the sill plates, under the walls, and go into neighboring apartments or condos if you're working in that type of application. It'll find any hole and go down through it. A lot of people don't realize it, but we can actually pour self-leveling over a plywood subfloor as well. It's not just for concrete subfloors. We can pour it on plywood if we have an uneven plywood subfloor. But anywhere where those 2 sheets of plywood come together, we've got that seam. Our self-leveler can go right through those seams. So we want to take some kind of material and fill all of those seams in to make sure that none of that's going to escape down the seams. If you have drains in the floor, finished plumbing isn't in, there's plumbing openings and things like that. Seal everything off.
Outlets.
Outlets, the same way. Heating and air conditioning vents as well. Anything in your floor where there is the potential for that self-leveler to go into, that self-leveler will find that spot, and it will go, and it can do a lot of damage to other areas. If it gets in there, there's a lot of water in it, so we're looking at water damage. It's going to cure to hard cement. If it goes down a drain, it blocks the drain. If it gets into your air conditioning duct, it can potentially block your air conditioning duct as well. So this is a self-adhesive foam that we use to kind of dam off areas we don't want it to go. A can of spray foam works good as well. And anything like that along the sill plates, a lot of guys will take like a caulking product, an inexpensive acrylic caulk, and caulk the perimeter of the room to make sure that it doesn't get under the 2x4 sill plates and things like that. So be very cautious before you start pouring self-leveler. Like we said with moisture mitigation, we got to have the slab clean and everything like that. There's a step to do before. We just don't walk into a room and start rolling it out, even back to acclimating the room, acclimating all of our materials to it. Watch the steps before. So after we get our moisture mitigation down and we're ready to do our self-leveling, before we mix it and pour it, dam off everything in the room, any spot where we potentially could have it go, then start mixing and pouring the product.
A very important point. We've done 2 of the stages so far, so again, this is going to be, there's going to be a Q&A section at the bottom of the screen for you. If you have any kind of questions, we will have people ready to answer those questions, so just feel free to put them at the bottom. We poured our self-leveling. We mixed it with water. Again, the main issue that we can have with the wood floor installation is water. So we cannot just turn around and install as soon as we feel it damp, dry to the touch.
Walkable.
Definitely, again, follow the manufacturer's recommendations as far as drying time, how long before you can pour your self-leveling on top of your moisture barrier, and then, most importantly, when can you start your actual installation of the floor on top of the self-leveling, because that moisture, remember, we blocked its path to migrate down, so it's only going to come up.
Correct.
Cover it with wood. That wood is a hygroscopic material. It can barely wait to absorb any kind of excess water, and it's going to be triggered. It will cup. You will have all sorts of problems.
Right. So most on the market, and again, always follow the recommendation, read the instructions on the package of the product you're working with. Most of them we're waiting next day, 12 to 16 to possibly 24 or more hours. Again, it varies by product that you're working with, but we're basically going to pour and flatten our floor day one. We can do it the same day, like I said, half-hour cure time for our first coat of roll coat down on concrete. Second coat will go down on top of that. That's got a 2-hour cure time. After that 2-hour cure time, we're going to pour our self-leveling product on top of it, and then we're going to wait 12 to 16 hours after we get it poured. That allows it to fully cure. That allows all the moisture to basically work its way out of it, so the moisture won't affect the wood flooring that we're going to glue down on top of it. So
Correct.
Follow your manufacturer's specifications, different products as we go. If you're not pouring self-leveler, you're doing a patch. A patch will obviously dry and cure a lot faster than self-leveling does. So there's the potential with the patch, depending on whose companies we're working with, that we could actually start our installation the same day.
Yes. This is another opportunity for you to complete those records about the project. If you use one of those moisture readers, you can always take a reading before the step and after the step. That way you know exactly that all that residual moisture was eliminated, and you can move on with the next one. You measure over your moisture barrier, you're going to get a certain reading. Now you measure over your self-leveling. If that self-leveling is not done drying, you're definitely going to get much higher value, and that's a sign for you. You have to wait.
Exactly. And again, like we said a few times throughout the presentation today, if you have any questions about any of the surface prep, the cement products, self-leveling, patching, cure times, dry times, what products work best with what system, type in your questions now. Let our experts that are online answer any of the questions that you have, and we'll get you all the information that you need to make sure that you have a successful installation.
Correct. Now we've addressed our potential issues. We've got our insurance as far as any kind of moisture problems. Now we move into the final step of the acclimation. The house is ready to receive the wood. Remember, if we are pouring, especially if we're pouring a larger surface, we're introducing a lot of moisture vapor. I would not want to acclimate my wood flooring product to that space because I've just introduced myself a high degree of moisture. So once that step is completed, you're either acclimating that product in a separate space within the same relative conditions. Normal living conditions, most manufacturers are going to require a 30 to 50% relative humidity in a 70 to mid 70 degree weather. Those have been proven to be, again, the most comfortable conditions as far as creature comfort. And there's actually a graph that you can also find on NWFA.org. That certain window is also the sweet spot for inhibiting growth of bacteria and viruses and so on. So those are basically the criteria on which we selected 30 to 50. Some people push it to 60 degree. That I start sweating when it gets close to that. Now, those conditions will obviously vary depending on the location you are in, the market you're in. You're going to have Pacific Northwest, where you're going to be in a constant high humidity environment. Same thing down in Florida. But now go down to Mexico, to New Mexico, go down to Colorado, and you're going to have a totally different environment. right? So you need to keep in mind the wood needs to be acclimated to those conditions. And to get a little geeky about it, at a certain relative humidity and temperature, your wood is gonna eventually, if you don't change those conditions, is gonna eventually arrive to an equilibrium moisture content. That's a certain value. As long as you keep those conditions, your wood is not gonna react. It's not gonna expand, it's not gonna contract. The minute you tweak any of those two values, you're tweaking that moisture content, and your wood is gonna start slowly to move towards that new value. That's why it's very important to have the wood acclimated before the installation. Wood will acclimate. So if you don't have the conditions before the install and you just shock the wood, it will react, and that's gonna lead to a lot of problems.
Right, and like Mike's saying, with the moisture in the self-leveler that we just poured, you know, it's 24 hours, 12 to 24 hours for it to cure out enough to where the moisture isn't coming out of the self-leveler, but our conditions in our house could have been perfectly acclimated before we poured this, and now we've thrown that completely out of the works. You know, we've introduced a lot of moisture. We may have had a 50% moisture rating in the house before we poured this, and all the water we just poured on the floor in the self-leveling product, it may have pushed us up to a 70 or 80. So we can install the next day, the surface product, the surface self-leveling products is ready to go, but our air humidity may be so out of whack that we may have to wait 4 or 5 more days,
Correct.
bring in some dehumidifiers, and bring our humidity back down into that 30 to 60 range.
Yes.
To where our wood is acclimated again to that right humidity, where essentially I call it the living space or the living temperature and humidity that we're going to be in for the life of that room.
Correct. Any conditions below that, like we're in Georgia right now. I'm trying to take all the precautions in my personal house. I do have a humidifier for the winter, a dehumidifier for the summer. I am having issues keeping it close to or above that 30% in the winter, even though I take all those measures. And in the summer, you know, you're in the shade doing nothing and you're just sweating. So it's kind of the same. There's no perfectly insulated structure. So however environmentally friendly that space might be, you still need to monitor those conditions, and that's also a very important part of the maintenance after the project. You need to educate your client. Those conditions need to be kept. Those conditions need to be maintained. Otherwise, you do a perfect job on the installation, but after the fact, that floor doesn't stand a chance if those conditions are not kept. So we've mitigated all our problems.
Yep.
Now it's actual time to start moving into the actual installation.
We pulled another Martha Stewart on you. Obviously, we can't install on the self-leveling we just poured, so we actually poured a slab of self-leveling a couple days ago, so it's fully cured and ready to go.
Correct.
I'm going to pull that one out, and we can start getting ready to actually do a glue-down application.
Whenever we talk about an installation, we need a proper plan. This is something that you discuss with your client. This is something that's going to vary depending on the layout of the space, depending on the product you're installing. Maybe there's a designer involved. So all of these things will help you make the decision of where to start your installation. And now we're talking about layout. You need to consider things like feature points of the space. Maybe there's a fireplace. Maybe you want to center it on the entry door. All of these decisions would need to have the client, the end user, involved. Once you have that set, the one recommendation on behalf of NWFA would be to consider all of the parameters, all of the variables, distances to exterior walls. We would not rely on one exterior wall to start our installation off of. All of those measurements need to be taken, and we need to establish a baseline. If our first line of installation is straight, our entire installation is going to be straight. So normally we would start with the longest line in the house. Again, that can be shifted left or right by however much you need in order to calculate. Maybe I want a full board at the front door, but I don't want to start at the front door. I want to start in the hallway. Before you even put down the first board, you can actually tell Mrs. Homeowner, yes, you're going to have 4.5 planks on the left side of the fireplace. I think that's going to score some points as well. And all of these neat tricks, these are, we can go into a lot more depth. There's plenty of training at Floor and Decor locations, and separately there's very in-depth, hands-on training with NWFA as well. You can find that on the website as well. So we have our space ready over there. We are going to need to establish our starting line. Again, based on measurements, maybe this is the center of the door. I want to measure the center of the door. I want to align my installation to the space itself. So once we take measurements and readings, we can establish a control line. I can still start on this side, but I measure off of that center control line, and I'm gonna translate it to the side. Now, again, in that pamphlet with guidelines of installation, and obviously in the NWFA installation guidelines, we need to account for expansion and contraction with regular variation between seasons. That means I'm not gonna cut my wood all the way into a fixed structure, whether it's a wall, door jamb, brick fireplace, or anything like that. The rule of thumb, whenever you consider that expansion space, is however thick your material is, that's the space you need to leave to any obstruction, anything fixed obstruction. So whenever you put that starting line, if you want to start with the full board, you will account for that. So leave that certain expansion space off of the wall. I think we're ready to start our line.
Okay.
Thank you. I will consider this edge my control line for my space. I want to measure back. I've got a measurement of 34 inches. Now, whether you're using a marker, chalk line, anything of the sorts, it's very easy nowadays to find different colors of chalk or different colors of markers just to make sure that you have your marking clearly visible.
And again, if you'd like, you can do all of this with lasers as well. You can set lasers up so that you have that laser line there, so you don't actually have to draw or mark anything.
One trick we like to use is snap our chalk line and then maybe spray a little bit of polyurethane out of one of those can sprays over it. That way you're not going to walk it off, you're not going to sweep it off, so you still have your fixed markings. We have been in the situation where we put our lasers and then somebody bumped it, and now we're back to square one where we have to refine those first measurements. Now, if you do start on a wall, in order for us to keep that expansion gap and keep our line straight, you can always use spacers. You can make your own out of the same type of material. You can also use hot glue to glue down some temporary boards, especially where the seams of the boards you use for the first line meet. That's going to help you push the material against it, and it's not going to shift your line. Time to talk about matching your wood to the adhesive. Now, again, every single manufacturer is going to have its own recommendations. A certain type of wood is going to require a certain type of adhesive. A certain type of adhesive for a certain type of wood is going to need a certain spread rate. And now it's time to talk about how we apply that adhesive.
All right, thanks. Thanks, Mike. So the Wood Grip Plus we have here and the Multi-Grip that we have here, these are the two products that are sold through the Floor and Decor stores on the Bostik line for hardwood. The Wood Grip Plus is a modified silane-based polymer, so it's going to be a little bit easier to spread, a little bit easier to work with, a little bit easier to clean off the surface if you should get it on there. That particular product, as far as what types of wood, that is approved for all. So all of the solids, all of the bamboo, all of the engineered can work and be installed with Wood Grip Plus. It's also approved for any width, any length, and any thickness. There are no restrictions with that particular adhesive. Also, another great thing about it, I know we talked about roll coat and moisture mitigation. Wood Grip Plus actually gives us unlimited moisture vapor protection in the adhesive itself. So if we wanted, we can do a one coat application versus a two coat process like we're going to show you the two coat process with the roll coat. I'll show you the Wood Grip Plus as a single application to get you moisture vapor control and adhesion all in one. So that product can basically do anything out there that you want it to. The multi-grip that I have here next to me, that product, I look at it as essentially it is an adhesive only. It has very low moisture blocking capabilities. Unless you do a lot of moisture testing and determine that your slab is very low in moisture, I would basically tell you that every time you're going to use multi-grip, you're going to use it in a two coat application, where the first is going to be the roll coat to block the moisture, and then the multi-grip we're using as adhesion only. So one thing to look at as far as, now we know, kind of what adhesive we're doing, what application we want to do, single or double coat. We're going to determine what trowel we're going to use to spread it. So I've got two different types of wood here. This is this is an engineered that we have here. You can see the back of it is completely flat. There's no grooves cut into it or anything like that. For bond only with both of these products, we need to have 80% transfer onto the back of this flooring. So when we spread it with our trowel, we put a piece in, we'll pull that piece out, flip it over, take a look at the back side of it. If I don't have 80% or better coverage on this, I'll have to step up to a bigger notch trowel to make sure I'm getting that coverage. That's just to hold the wood flooring down to the floor. If we're using the Wood Grip Plus and we're wanting to get full moisture vapor protection and adhesion all in one, we have to get 100% coverage. So not only do we have to have our slab completely covered, but we have to have the backside of the wood completely covered in glue. When we spread the glue, put that board in, pull it back up and look at the backside of it, that should be completely covered in adhesive as well. Like I showed you with the roll coat, when I rolled it across and we could see the spots where the light colored flooring or subfloor showed through, that was where moisture was going to come up through. Same thing here. If we don't have the adhesive in a Wood Grip Plus single application process there to block that moisture is going to come right through and damage your wood flooring. So what trowel do we use for which to get that coverage? Again, the engineered is completely flat. This solid hardwood, if you look at it real close, you can see there's 3 grooves that they machine into the back of that wood flooring. We have to get the adhesive up into those seams as well. So I brought a bunch of different trowels with me here today to kind of show you guys what you're going to need to kind of look at when you're doing it. So that particular trowel, that's a 1/4 by 1/4 by 1/8 inch deep. So the depth of the adhesive that we're going to put down on the floor is only 1/8 of an inch high, sticking up off the floor. So if we spread that with that particular trowel, and we have this with these grooves in it, those grooves are they're about 1/4 of an inch deep. So our adhesive isn't even high enough on the floor where it can get up and touch the top of those grooves. So that trowel may work great as an adhesive only. It'll get us the 80% we need, but it won't get us all the way to 100. This might be the perfect trowel to get us to 100 on a perfectly flat engineered. So it might work perfect for an engineered, but again, too small for our groove-backed solid. So this trowel right here, that is a 1/4 inch V-notch trowel is what this particular trowel is called. So it'll leave us a 1/4 inch high ridge of our adhesive on the floor. Like I said, these grooves are about 1/4 of an inch deep. So that's getting us real close to maybe this trowel being the right one to get us 100% coverage on our solid with our grooves in it. On our flat, completely flat back engineered, that's probably the perfect trowel to get us to that full 100% coverage on the back of our engineered. So if we have to, again, step up, we're trying to get 100% coverage. This is a one-step application with Wood Grip Plus. This is a 1/4 by 3/8. So you can see how deep that notch of those trowels in. The adhesive is going to stand 3/8 of an inch high up off the floor. 1/4 inch groove in the backside of the wood flooring, 3/8 glue sticking up off the floor. That should get us at that 100% coverage. So I'm gonna do a demo real quick on our self-leveling pad here, and I'll show you the 3 different trowels with the Wood Grip Plus and how it's looking as far as coverages go. And then we'll start to dig in deeper as far as spreading adhesive and actually installing the wood floor itself.
A couple of things I want to mention about everything Doug just said. If you are relying on transferring that guarantee to your client as far as 100% moisture protection because of the adhesive, that transfer, that glue transfer test, some manufacturers might require you to do that every 50 square feet. So you proceed with your regular installation, 50 square feet or so later, pull one board, verify adhesion, snap that picture, keep it with your records. And the second one, as far as the trowel, this trowel, for example, it's a 3/16 tall tooth. Our 3/16 is this. Whenever you apply that adhesive, the angle of the trowel is actually very important. If I want to leave a 3/16 inch tall ridge, I will want to be as close to perpendicular as possible. This is not a 3/16 inch.
Correct. And yeah, in most cases, most people are holding their trowel at a 45 to 60.
Yes.
Because to spread at a full 90 is actually, it's very difficult to spread product when you are at a full 90-degree edge with the trowel. So again, this is our 1/4 by 3/8 square notch trowel. I'm just gonna spread a little bit out here. Again, I just kind of want to show you the difference in the trowel notches as far as how the coverages are on the back side of the wood flooring. So this is our 3/4 solid. You can see the grooves in it. That's our 1/4 by 1/8. So I'll put the flooring into it, pull it out, and you can see I did better than what I actually thought I was going to do. I don't have complete coverage. You can see there's a few spots where the wood is showing through, and it's a little bit light down on the end there. But all in all, like I said, this trowel would probably work really good for doing an installation. We're definitely over 80%. If we weren't concerned about moisture, you know, if we were spreading this on top of roll coat, which we had already put down, this would be great coverage. That would be a good trowel for that application. Again, like I said, we're trying to get full coverage. We want that 100% coverage over the entire back, even up all the way into all the grooves. So that was an 1/8 inch tall. Mike told us that's a 3/16. I thought it was a 1/4, my bad. Again, look at what you're buying at the store.
This was my 3/16, so you were correct and I was correct.
All right. But again, remember, I'm at a 45-degree angle, so I'm not really technically putting a full 3/16 depth of adhesive down. It's probably, again, probably closer to an 1/8 of an inch. So again, we'll take that and see if we can get our 100% coverage with the V-notch. And you can see again, we didn't get any better at that point in time. We still have the same voids that we had in the past. We're still light on the end. It's getting up into them a little bit, but we're not getting that complete 100% coverage on the backside of our wood floor that we would need in a single application moisture mitigation glue down system. So this is the big 3/8 by 1/4 square notch trowel. So again, this one's giving us that 3/8 height that the glue is going to come up, or maybe just a little bit under, because again, I'm going to have the trowel at a bit of an angle when I spread with it. So we come across, we're going to take the same board, put it into our adhesive, and you can see at that point, that's what it took to get that 100% coverage. Complete moisture mitigation control and adhesion all in one process, all in one application. Again, we can go back That's the 3/4 solid that we talked about. So if you're working with an engineered, again, bring a couple trowels to the job site. See what it's gonna take. Don't just show up there with one trowel on installation day and go, this is the trowel that we're spreading with and this one's gonna do everything. You might need a couple different ones. So that's our engineered, flat back engineered. This is our 1/4x8 square notch. Again, this is a wide board. There might be a little bit of a cup in the board. I might need to go a little taller. You know, still not quite at it. The board's not perfectly flat. It's got a little bit of a cup to it. So we have a few spots that we actually missed on it. And that's the 1/4x8 square notch. So if I switch over to that V notch, that 3/16 quarter V notch, we'll spread that one out. Again, with our engineered, we get that in there, and you can see I'm pretty much at that 100%. I didn't put any weight down on this end, that's why it's a little light. But where I was pressing it in, you can see I have that full coverage. Other thing to think about when you're installing wood flooring, don't just set it in there. Actually put a little pressure on it, work it in, especially if you're trying to get that 100% coverage. Work it into the adhesive a little bit to make sure that you're getting that good coverage. See how I worked it in there? Now I've got the coverage. So perfectly flat board, 1/4" V notch typically works. If you get into a solid with some grooves in it to get that full coverage, that 1/4x3/8 square notch is gonna be the trowel that you're going to need to do that application. All right, so now that we kind of know what trowel that we're going to need.
That will also dictate, and this could be done sort of a reverse engineer of the project. Now you know what the proper trowel, proper coverage is. Now you're going to know exactly the amount of adhesive you're going to be using for the project, because every single bucket, depending on the trowel you'll be using, is going to have a forecasted coverage.
Correct.
If you were to err on one side or the other, I would always err on the overkill side for any project. I would not just want to do the bare minimum required. You always, I'm a big fan of peace of mind. So if I will want to take all of those precautions. In our case, on that particular example, you can probably see we have all of the steps of the system. We have our moisture barrier, we have our self-leveling, and then we have our adhesive.
Correct. All right, so now the actual installation process, you know, how to do it. So all Bostik adhesives for gluing down hardwood, we're going to go into them wet. You saw me when we were talking about coverage, I was putting the boards in wet. I'm not letting it flash off. It shouldn't have a skin on the surface of it when you try and go into it. We want to go into it wet. So obviously there's going to be a certain way to do the installation as far as how much adhesive we can spread and how much coverage we're going to be able, or how much space we're going to be able to work on. So we don't want to work, obviously we can't work, there's a wall here. So we're starting on our wall and we're working away. My arm reach is only so far. I don't want to start spreading glue a long way out because I'm going to have to reach back into the, over the adhesive to get the flooring installed into it. So figure out what your wingspan is, what your arm reach is, without getting your knees into the glue. When you're spreading it, a lot of guys feel like they can reach a long way, but when you have to go back and actually install the wood, you'll find that you cannot reach as far as what you could when you were spreading, so your knees end up in the glue. I tell most people think about 24 inches. That's a pretty easy reach for most people. If you've got really long arms, you can maybe go 30, but figure in that 24-inch kind of range. The wood flooring we're looking at today, I'd say that's about 9 inches wide.
It's a 9.5 inch, so it's a pretty hefty, pretty wide floor. Couple of other things to keep in mind. Adhesives have a certain working time. That working time might be affected by your conditions, your relative humidity or temperature, so on and so forth. Do not spread more adhesive than you think you will be able to cover with the flooring within that working time. If it started to skin over, you're going to have issues. All that warranty is out the window.
Right.
One other thing, we spoke about acclimation. Just as important for your adhesive. You're doing a glue down installation in the winter. You got your buckets of glue outside in the van at 5 degrees Fahrenheit. You bring them inside. That's not going to be a pleasant experience.
Right.
Obviously, there are limitations as far as storage, shelf life, temperature conditions. Some products are going to be freeze-thaw stable, some are not. So obviously, we want to use ready-to-go materials, good, valid.
Right.
So we need to keep those things in mind as well. I'm probably going to have a very large wingspan. If I have a 60-foot run and I'm going to spread 3 feet of glue over 60 feet, I'm probably going to go over that working time of the product before I can install all of it.
Right. To where you would potentially have some skinning issues and then have to scrape the glue back off the floor, throw it away, and reapply glue. So yeah, definitely work within your reach and within your capabilities of timing. With this particular product, I tell people not to spread humid day like it is here today in Georgia. I wouldn't go more than what I could install in about 20 minutes to a half an hour. Correct. You were talking in the wintertime at your house, humidity might drop to 30% or something. If you're in an environment like that, obviously we can go a little farther. Moisture actually cures this adhesive. So the more humidity, the more moisture in the air that we have, the faster this product is going to cure or start to skin over on you. So really dry days, we can spread a little bit more glue and not have to worry about it.
Right. So this is a modified silane. It does rely on that moisture to cure. So if you got a 72 degree at 14% humidity in Colorado, you might have a certain working time window. If you have a 65 to 70 relative humidity because you're in and out of that door bringing materials in at 72 in Georgia, you're going to have a totally different working time with that product. Now, as a general rule, right now we are showcasing a silane adhesive. You need to consider what type of material you're working with. We're working with a pre-finished engineered product here. If you use a urethane adhesive with a pre-finished material, you want to make sure you get no or as little adhesive as possible on top of that finish. Doesn't matter what type of finish, doesn't matter what type of urethane, it will etch that finish unless it's cleaned immediately. And every single product, every single manufacturer is going to recommend, types of cleaning that adhesive off the surface, but you do not want to let it harden because it will etch the finish. A little bit of a job site hack that we do. Like Doug said, a clean job is a happy job. If I know I'm going to be working with a 9-inch material, I have my starting line, I know I'm going to be able to install 3 rows within that working time of the adhesive. What I'm going to do before I spread my adhesive, I'm going to measure my 27 inches on one side, 27 inches on the other side, snap a chalk line. I'm going to keep my glue application between those lines.
Right.
That way, I've got my 3 rows down, then I might want to strap them, I might want to block them to let it set in before I continue. I'm not going to have to scrape any dried glue when I come back to this installation, so that's going to keep for a very clean and neat job.
Right. Helps keep your knees out of the glue too if you kind of know what space you're working. So again, how you spread the adhesive, you can see I pull everything in straight lines perpendicular to the length of the wood. For me, I've found that gets the best square footage use of the adhesive. I can spread it the farthest with that, and I find I also get the best coverage. That is my personal preference. That is not a mandatory recommendation from Bostik. You can spread it in any direction you would like. The adhesive is nice and soft. It's going to flatten itself out as you put pressure on the boards, no matter what direction you do it. This is just my preferred way of spreading the adhesive.
All right. Before we apply it, I want to remind you again, any kind of questions about everything we've discussed so far, feel free to put them down in the Q&A section, and we're going to have people ready to answer those questions. And this is another job site kind of hack, left or right to left. Some people, we're dealing with tongue and groove material. So some people like to install groove out. Some people like to install tongue out. I'm a groove out type of person.
Just the opposite.
And the reason for that, for myself, right, we have these pre-cut to the size of our space. Now, right here, we just left a little bit of self-leveling that we did not install so we can show the moisture barrier. When we do pre-cut these, again, all sides, all around the perimeter, we need to consider that expansion gap. So I'm gonna align my board to the line I snapped down. I'm gonna have some blocking here to hold it in place. The reason I like to install tongue out, I can swing this into place without having to then pull too much glue in between that tongue and groove when I install it. That's just me. Some people don't have a problem when they go groove out. It's not going to make a difference.
Right. There isn't a right or wrong way to do it. When you're nailing it down, you always have to have the tongue show because you're nailing into it. When you're gluing them in place, you can work either direction. The adhesive is what's holding it down. So depending on what direction you want to work or what works best for you, you can actually go either direction. I got it, Mike.
Okay.
So again, have a hammer on hand,
Mallet.
If you do have to tap them in a little bit, a block to kind of tap them in
block.
so you don't damage an edge if you got to tap on an end or an edge to get them to all come in. But again, spread the adhesive. You can see I'm past a little bit where our space was. I'm spreading this as 100% coverage, moisture mitigation, and adhesion all in one. So I don't want to come right up to a strong line gap and have my wood end there, because it'll be difficult for me to get glue in there in my next pull of adhesive. So I want to come maybe an inch and a half past, so that I have adhesive down, so when I come back in and spread my next, I'm not gonna have a seam in there anywhere where I don't have an adhesive blocking the moisture.
And that's especially important when we do try to follow that 100% coverage to obtain that 100% moisture blocking properties. So
Correct.
scratch what I said in that case.
That would be the only case. And again, I know when you look at this layout here, we have the roll coat moisture mitigation under it. We were just trying to show you the one-step application. Wood Grip Plus as the adhesive and moisture mitigation all in one. So get the right trowel. You know, you didn't need to do the 2 coats here, or the full coat with the adhesive, because we have the roll coat underneath this one. But we're just trying to show you what that would look like if you're on a job site, and that's the choice you decide to go with, is the Wood Grip Plus as your moisture mitigation adhesion one-step application.
Right. This is a perfect example to illustrate the importance of properly leveling that substrate. If you do have those low spots, high spots, and you do not address those, you will never get that 100% coverage. Right now we're dealing with 72 by 9 inch boards. You will never be able to help this board, no matter how much you weigh it down, tape it in,
Right.
to conform 100% to that coverage. If there's a claim, any kind of intrusive inspection where a board is pulled is gonna show that you did not follow that manufacturer recommendation.
The other thing you'll get if you don't flatten it first, hollow spots.
Hollow spots.
Biggest complaint, one of the biggest complaints for homeowners when they walk across their floor. Sounds good and solid here, but when they get to there, it's got that real hollow sound. That's a sign of lack of flatness in your substrate when you do the installation.
And Murphy's Law, that's always going to happen in the highest traffic pattern, whether it's in front of the sink, entryway. So we do want that peace of mind. We do want to address all of these potential issues before they happen. I know there are certain solutions with injecting hollow spots. You do not want to play that game.
Right.
That's not going to be a good look on your company in front of your client. You're coming back for callbacks. Again, in the long run, it's not about taking the extra time and extra step to fix the problem. It's about building that good reputation. You do things by the book. You're going to be chasing the right kind of client with that type of attitude and professionalism.
Right. do it. It's more of take a little time, do it right the first time. It's
Correct.
faster and easier to do it right the first time, even if it takes a little longer than to go back and have to tear out and redo.
Good.
All right, so let's talk about the multi-grip adhesive behind me here and spreading that as a bond only over our roll coat, which is our moisture mitigation. Now again, we're switching from the Wood Grip Plus that we had, that's silane-based polymer. So easy to spread, easy to clean, and we're going to a urethane. Multi-grip is urethane base. Trowel-wise, we're still using the same trowels. We're still trying to get the same coverage. Like I said, we need at least 80% coverage for a bond-only application. So 1/4-inch V-notch, you just saw us install with that 1/4-inch V-notch. That got us 100% coverage for moisture and bond. So what we know in some of the trials that we just did is that if we take our 1/4 by 1/4 square notch, that particular trowel will get us that 80% or better that we need. So that's going to be the trowel that we're going to use to spread our adhesive for the bond only over the top of our roll coat. Are you switching the wood on me?
Yes, I am.
He's going to switch the wood on me. So here I brought my trowel today thinking I was putting in a regular engineered. Mike shows up and he's got a 3/4 solid that he's going to have me put in.
The reason I want to show this is the same principle apply to a straight lay like we have over here where you have the same direction as they do to a pattern. The only difference is going to be, again, adjusting to the type of wood, adjusting the application method and the coverage rate, and the layout, which, again, more on the layout can be found in specific trainings about installation in general. Nail down, glue down, they are the same. We are going to show a little bit of a twist. So right here we have a Floor and Decor product. It is a herringbone pattern. Just because it's a herringbone pattern, we're going to show it twist on a twist. We're going to also show how it can easily be installed as a checkerboard pattern. That might be a very good upsell for you on your client. Maybe you want to highlight a certain area in the house, maybe the entryway, the living room. But the same principles apply for installing a pattern as we do on a straight lay.
Right. Coverage-wise and everything else is still the same as well. 3/4 solid, again, if we were gluing that particular one down, you could see it had the grooves in the back. We were doing full glue and moisture mitigation with the Wood Grip Plus all in one. Knowing that, what we saw earlier, we'd be spreading it with a 1/4 by 3/8 square notch. This particular one we're going to install over roll coat. So the roll coat is doing our moisture mitigation, so we just need bond. We saw in the tests earlier that 1/4-inch 3/16 V-notch trowel is going to get us at that 80% or better. So that's going to be the trowel that I'm going to use to install this, this solid hardwood that we're looking at today. All right, did you want to talk a little about...
Do a little bit about layout?
A little bit about the layout on this one. Mike's going to kind of show us how to lay out a pattern type flooring versus a straight lay floor.
So again, we have to consider all of the feature points. This is a conversation to be had with your client. That's how the decision is made. You might think it looks very good a certain way. It might look totally different in their view. But if we set a center line, a starting line, we have to also consider what type of pattern we are installing. We mentioned the checkerboard and the herringbone. There are different methods of layout for that. For both of them, we will still need a center line where the pattern is going to be centered. So we're going to have that center line. This is the case for the
I was going to say that's where we might need our, here it is.
Okay.
So the black color, another nice thing about the black color of the roll coat product that we have down, again, we're using a Sharpie marker here today. Mike's got a silver one, so it shows up on our black. But if you think about your chalk lines on a job site, red, yellow, blue are the typical colors of chalk line chalk. When you snap that against a black background, that chalk line's going to just pop. You're going to be able to see it very clearly on your job site.
So depending on the layout, on the type of layout, for a more intricate pattern, there are going to be multiple steps to the layout. So that is a very good opportunity for you to color code each step so you don't get your marks mixed. But with the checkerboard pattern, we just have a center line. Again, we only have this much panel here, but we're assuming the space is wider. The one feature about herringbone is all of the pieces are going to be the exact same size.
There are lefts and rights to a herringbone pattern, even if you're setting it up as a checkerboard. Pay attention to the lefts and rights and make sure you're setting the right pieces together in the right way.
With herringbone or any other pattern, so you consider, we are working with tongue and groove, so we want to make sure that our entire installation is locked in with that tongue and groove system. That's why with the herringbone pattern, your pieces are going to have lefts and rights as far as this pre-finished material. If they do not, I highly recommend having a router with a groove bit, and you can buy slip tongues for that specific type of product, and you can lock in any other pieces. You might have a piece that you just have to cut at a border. You still want to keep that tongue and groove construction.
Tongue and groove help from having the flooring move vertically on you. You know, the horizontal movement of expansion and contraction is normal, but the tongue and groove help to lock it in so you don't have boards starting to lift in different elevations.
I am missing.
You need the other.
Yes.
Is it a left or a right?
Both.
Both?
Can I have the mallet?
The mallet?
Yes, please. So this would be a checkerboard installation. I'm missing a board on that side, but we're basically aligning them alternatively in squares. It's gonna yield for a very pleasing aesthetic.
Yes.
Perfect for highlighting, like I said, an entryway or maybe a kitchen, wherever that client wants to apply it.
Right.
Alternatively, we're gonna also show the regular herringbone pattern. We're gonna set that into adhesive.
Yep.
Please. While Doug is applying the adhesive for that, I was talking about differences between the layouts. With the herringbone pattern, we do have our center line, but for a herringbone pattern to be truly centered, we need to look at what the actual center of the pattern is. And we know we have 2 points for each alternate row. Our actual center goes through the middle of the short ends of both rows. So that's where we want to align our center line. In order to have the reference lines, which we call control lines, we would need to figure out the distance from the center line to either side to the two lines that we can keep our points on. And those are in the installation guidelines and can also be learned with hands-on trainings that you can find on NWFA.org. They are nationwide, along with Floor and Decor, some standalone. But all of this information is readily available.
Right.
As an NWFA member, which we highly recommend, you will have access to all of the publications. You will have access to a lot of information, workshops, trainings. I would also encourage everyone to subscribe to the Hardwood Floor magazine. It's a free publication, again, full of articles and a lot of information. All good things to learn and to have on hand. Will make it very easy to eliminate any of those questions you might have or problems you might run into. I'm starting to like that.
It's a nice looking pattern. And again, obviously we're working on a small area. On a big floor, we would have spread a bigger area of adhesive.
Right.
You can see I'm off of it in a couple of places. But make sure you're getting, again, we've got the roll code, which helps greatly when we're doing an application like this. I probably would have snapped a few more lines, spread my glue a little different. This is, just a demo to show you the patterns. But having the roll coat down to block the moisture in this situation means I only have to work to get that 80% coverage with the adhesive. So as I'm spreading adhesive around all of my snapped lines and knowing kind of where my flooring is going to lay out and I spread, if I miss a few spots and have a few open gaps from the adhesive, not the end of the world. The moisture is blocked with the roll coat in this application.
Right. There was a discussion about which direction to orient the ridges. Now, this particular case right here, that's another reason I wanted to showcase a pattern. We are going to have a multi-directional floor.
Right.
It's not possible to orient all of the ridges perpendicular or parallel to the direction of the relief cuts on the back. So that is not the important factor. The important factor is adjusting your trowel, your adhesive to your material. Get that proper coverage, maintain those properties that adhesive manufacturer guarantees.
Right. Again, like I said, when I spread the Wood Grip Plus over there, I'm a straight pull kind of a trowel guy, and you can see I did it here again. But if it's easier for you to spread it in different patterns, swirl patterns, arches, whatever, direction doesn't really matter with the wood flooring adhesive. That adhesive is going to flatten out when you put it in. Again, most important thing, pull the flooring up, look at the back side of it. You can see I know this doesn't have adhesive on it. We didn't have any there. Down here where the board was in the adhesive, we're definitely over the 80% minimum that we need to get the proper amount of adhesive on for the bond for this application.
Yes, there is absolutely nothing wrong using the same adhesive for all of your directions. So I heard of some ideas of using some different type of adhesion. You want to offer your entire floor the same fastening system. That way, if there is going to be a change, a variation, it's all going to perform and act the same. I would absolutely not mix products.
Correct,
on an installation.
yes.
You run short, you have a half a bucket of something else, leave it in the van. Do yourself
buy
a
another
favor.
bucket.
Yes. Covered it all?
I think that does cover it all. Again, we're still here answering questions. Anything you got, type in a chat. Our experts are here answering all of your questions today. So anything that you've seen today, moisture mitigation, what is proper for the exterior of the building, removing whatever old adhesive or old flooring that's on the floor before you start, acclimation, self-leveling, patching, and then down to final finish gluing the flooring down itself. Any questions you have, shoot a chat in right away, and we can get those answered for you today.
All right. Thank you very much for joining us, and we hope this was informational. For more, Floor & Decor always puts out these informational webinars, so join us in the future.
Thank you.